Welcome to this Wisel SQL Server 2017 tutorial. This video gives you a quick guide to installing reporting services for SQL Server 2017, which works a little differently compared to previous versions of SQL Server. As with the previous video, this is intended as a quick guide rather than as a comprehensive reference for administrators. So the intention here is just to show you just enough to get up and running as quickly as possible so that you can follow along with some of our video series or practice the skills you've learnt on a Wisel training course. The things we'll cover in this video very quickly are first of all how to download and install Reporting Services 2017. Then we'll take you through the Report Server Configuration Manager for the three components you need to configure to get up and running as quickly as possible. Once we've done that, we'll explain how you can view the web portal so you can see the items that belong to your report server. And just to demonstrate that everything's working properly, we'll use Report Builder to quickly create and deploy a simple report and then view it on the web portal. The last part of the video just very quickly explains where you need to go in order to grant access to other users so that they can see the reports you've deployed. So let's get started. Okay, before we get started, I'm going to assume that you've already installed an instance of SQL Server 2017. You will need to do that at some point in order to configure reporting services after you've installed it. So if you haven't already, then we have this convenient video that explains exactly how to install SQL Server 2017 Developer Edition as quickly and painlessly as possible. So I'll assume you've done that already. The next thing you'll need to do is find the installer files for Reporting Services 2017. There are a couple of ways you can do that. I guess the obvious simple way would be to head to Google and search for Reporting Services 2017, and that will land you fairly shortly on the download page for Microsoft SQL Server 2017 Reporting Services. If you've already installed an instance of SQL Server 2017, you can also use the Installation Center to find this. So if I head to my Start menu and then scroll down to the Microsoft SQL Server section and find Microsoft SQL Server 2017, I can launch the Installation Center. You may remember this if you watched the previous video already. I can click Yes to allow this to make changes to my computer, and then when the application's opened, I can head onto the installation page, and there's a handy link there to install SQL Server Reporting Services. All this does, by the way, is just takes you to the exact same download page that I found through Google, so it doesn't really matter which of the two options you pick. I'm just going to close down the Installation Center. Its sole job was to land me on this page, and then I can choose to download Reporting Services just by clicking the download button. It's not a particularly big file, it shouldn't take too long to do, but I'm just going to pause so you don't have to sit through the painful process of watching it download. Okay, so now the file's finished downloading, I can simply click on the executable to launch the installer wizard, and that hopefully won't take too long. And when it's opened, we can simply follow a couple of basic steps to choose to install Reporting Services 2017. So we get a simple little welcome and one single option on here, Install Reporting Services. We get to choose which edition we want. I don't want an evaluation edition, I want to install the developer edition, so we can keep that for as long as we like. Just as we saw in the previous video, the restriction is that this can't be used for production environments, so it's just for testing and practicing your skills. Having done that, I can click the Next button and then read the license terms very quickly, done, and then check the box to accept those terms, and then click Next. You don't get as much help with configuring reporting services these days. If you've installed reporting services in previous versions of SQL Server, you'll have the option to install and configure a default installation of reporting services. These days, you don't get that choice. You have to do the configuration yourself afterwards. It's not too difficult, and we'll cover that in this video. The other big difference is that you can't install a separate instance of SQL Server Reporting Services for each separate instance of SQL Server 2017. You get one instance of reporting services that's shared, a little bit like the integration services component is. So we can install reporting services only, this is the only choice here. We can then click Next. Choose the install location, I'll go with the default, and then simply click the install button. And while that's happening, I'm just going to quickly pause. Oh, sorry, I should just click yes, I do want it to actually install. And I'll pause the video so you don't have to watch the progress bar reach the end. And we'll pick it up when this is finished. Okay, so the installation is finished, and we get the choice now to manually configure the report server. We can do that directly by clicking the Configure Report Server button on the dialog box, and I'll do that now, and choose Yes to allow this to make changes to my machine, and that will launch the SQL Server, the Report Server Configuration Manager tool. I can choose to connect to an instance of reporting services. I just get the default one installed, which is SSRS. If I wanted to launch this tool myself separately afterwards, if I just cancel from this for the moment, I can head to the Start menu and then scroll down to find the Microsoft SQL Server Reporting Services section. So I should now have a new little section here, Microsoft SQL Server Reporting Services, and then in there is Report Server Configuration Manager. So I can launch it from the Start menu as well subsequently if I didn't want to immediately after installing the software. Okay, so let's click connect to the instance of reporting services that's been installed called SSRS. And then when the dialog box reappears, there are several things we need to do in order to make this work. So there's a little message here at the top that explains that before we can use it, we must configure the web service URL, the database, and the web portal URL. So I'll just go through those 3 steps relatively quickly. Just like the previous video, the intention isn't here to teach you how to be a reporting services administrator. It's just enough to get you up and running as quickly as possible. So let's start with the web service URL by clicking web service URL on the links on the left hand side. The easiest thing to do here is just to accept all the default values by clicking the apply button, but that would create a URL with a fairly generic sounding report server in its name. And if you do have multiple instances of reporting services installed from previous versions of SQL Server, that could be a little bit confusing. So I'm going to give mine a slightly less ambiguous name. I'm going to add on 2017 to the name of my web service URL, so report server 2017, and then I can click the apply button to have those changes made. Now you'll get a little results section at the bottom which explains what's happening, so hopefully we're going to see a whole bunch of green circles with ticks in them at this point. It can take a little while for this to happen, but finally, successfully, there we go, our report server web service URL is now configured. The next thing we should do is configure the report server database. So let's click on the database link on the left hand side. This is the point at which you'll need your instance of SQL Server installed. So assuming you've done that already, let's click the Change Database button to launch a little wizard to help us create the database. We can also choose an existing report server database if we have one, but I don't, so I'll choose to create a new report server database and then click Next. Now I need to enter the name of the SQL server that's going to hold the report server database. If you can't remember what that is, or you just wanted to check that the service was running, you could use the SQL Server Configuration Manager tool just to check. So as we did in the previous video, we can head to the Start menu and scroll down to Microsoft SQL Server 2017 and open that folder. Then we can open up the Configuration Manager tool. We can click yes to allow it to make changes to our machine, and when it loads and lists out the instances of SQL Server available, we should find at least one instance of SQL Server 2017. So I've got 2 here. For this video, I'm going to use the one called SQL 2017 Training. So at this point, I can head back to the Report Server Configuration Manager and just add on that part of information. So I can say / SQL 2017 Training, and in fact, I can just pick it from the list here just to make my life easy. Let's just click Test Connection to make sure it's going to work. I feel much better about it now, so I can click OK and then click Next to configure the database itself. So you can choose a name for the database. It's unlikely you'll create more than one report server database on the same server, but just in case you wanted to give this a less ambiguous name than just report server, we can change the name of this one. Let's call this one Report Server 2017 Training, just to link it to the name of the instance that we're creating the database on. This is one potential way to get around the issue of only having one instance of reporting services. You could create multiple report server databases, and you could create those databases on different SQL Server 2017 instances if you wanted to. Now, although only one of those can be active at the time, you can use the Report Server Configuration Manager tool to switch between them by coming back to this page and selecting an existing report server database in this wizard. For now, I'm just going to accept those settings and then click the Next button. Now we get to set the authentication for the service account for the report server. I'm just going to accept the default options here and then click Next. And I'm actually going to see a little warning message about my Windows account. Essentially, this is to do with having my Windows account joined to a domain, but not actually having access to the domain at this point in time, basically because the domain's at work and I'm at home. So I'm just going to click OK to accept that I've read the warning, and then see the configuration settings summary, and I can just click next at that point to generate the new database. So we get a little progress bar, and then it should show us it's running the database script to create the database, and it shouldn't take too long for this to work. Bit more information, nearly there. Okay, so that's all finished. We can click the finish button at that point, and then we get a little set of results at the bottom saying that it's stopped and then started the report server. So our database is now configured. The final step we need to perform is to configure the URL of the web portal, which is the tool we'll use to access all the items stored on the report server. So let's head onto the web portal URL page, and then we can set up a virtual directory for the web portal. So again, just to make this URL unambiguous, I'm going to change its name so it's called Reports 2017, so I know what instance or what version of SQL Server this one's related to. Having done that, all I need to do now is click the apply button at the bottom, and again I get a little progress message at the bottom. So again, hopefully this is all working, and there we go. That is now finally finished. Okay, so at this point we should be able to quickly test that our web portal is working just by clicking on the link that's been provided to us. This will open up our default web browser and try to browse us to the web portal homepage. So let's click that now. Now I'm going to encounter a small problem related to the account credentials I talked about briefly earlier on, to do with my domain connected account not being able to access the domain at this point. So I'm going to get a little could not load folder contents message. One quick simple way I can get around this, just to prove that the web server is working, or sorry, the report server is working, is I can just copy the URL from Chrome and I can open up Internet Explorer. Not that I do that very often these days, but I can open up Internet Explorer using the administrator mode, so I can run Internet Explorer as administrator. If I choose to, yes, I want to allow it to make changes to my machine, and then I paste in the same URL I've just copied, I can then browse to my web portal URL and see that the folder's empty, kind of hopefully as you would expect at this point. But at least the web portal is actually running. Now at this point you'll probably also want to test that you can create and deploy reports to this report server. One simple way to do that is to use the Report Builder application. You can download Report Builder directly from your web portal using the little download link in the top right hand corner, and then choose Report Builder. Now we do have a complete series on how to work with Report Builder, or I say an ongoing series I should say, rather than a complete one. So Report Builder 2016, the tool is exactly the same 2016 and 2017, it doesn't actually matter, but the entire tutorial there, from installing Report Builder through creating reports and saving your reports to report servers, so you can follow this tutorial for a bit more detail. For now, what it might be worthwhile just quickly doing is opening up Report Builder, creating a very basic report, and then saving it to this report server. So I'll just quickly search for Report Builder from the search bar. I can search for Report Builder. I have a couple of different versions installed, a much older version 3.0 and a specific one for Power BI. So for now I'll go for the Report Builder application. I need to right click and choose to run as administrator again. You won't need to do that yourself, hopefully, but this is again just to do the credentials that aren't working properly for my account at this point in time. Anyway, once I've loaded the application, I can just clear the Getting Started panel. Creating a report itself, then there's an awful lot we can do here. Let's just quickly click to add a title, My First Lovely Report, or something along those lines. And then what we could do is create a data source which connects to a SQL Server database installed on our instance of SQL Server 2017. This is a database we explained how to quickly install towards the end of the first video in this series. So if you're not sure how to do that and you want to find a link to download the file, this is the video to go to. So what I'll do here very quickly is right click my data sources folder and choose to add a data source. And then when the wizard loads, I'll create a quick name for the data source. I'll call it movies. And I'll use an embedded connection, which means I can build up a connection string to connect to this database. My instance name for SQL Server is called ./SQL 2017 training. The full stop there is just a quick shortcut to the local host. So as this SQL Server instance is on the same machine as I'm creating the report on, I don't need to type in the entire server name. I can then click on the drop-down list to find a database, and I should only have one available basically, which is my movies database. Although you should also see your report server databases exist in this list reassuringly here as well. Let's click movies, and then I can test the connection just to check that works and reassure myself. Click OK, and then click OK again. Now I want to use that data source to create a basic query and return some results in the form of a data set that I can base my report on. So I can right-click the movies data source and then choose to add a data set to it. Let's call the data set something simple like films, and then I can use the query designer tool to help me build my query without having to write any SQL code. Well, that's quite fun in and of itself. We have a separate tutorial on writing SQL Server queries, but for now I'll just pick a few fields from the film table. I'll pick the title and the release date and the runtime minutes and Oscar wins. I can then click OK a couple of times to return that set of results to my datasets folder. I then need to display those results somehow, so I'm going to right-click into the report body and choose Insert Table. Then I can either use the little field selector button here to select fields, so I can pick title and then pick release date and runtime minutes. And if I run out of space, I can then simply click and drag fields from the window on the left. I can drag Oscar wins and drop that at the end of the table. I can change a few column widths just to make things a little more easy to read when the report finally runs. I could do some basic formatting for cells here, so I could right-click the release date text box and choose its properties, and then head to the number tab and choose a particular date format, something nice and quick and simple to read. And then I could apply some very, very basic formatting. Again, we've done this in an awful lot of detail in the other series all about Report Builder, so I'm not going to spend a huge amount of time doing this. Okay, so at that point it might be worthwhile quickly running the report just to check what the results look like. This often takes a little bit of time the first time you do that. There we go, it's a beautiful report. I'm going to head back to the design view now, and then we can look at how we can save this report to our new report server. In order to save the report to a report server, we first of all need to connect to it, and the simple way to do that is click Connect at the bottom of the window. You'll then need to know your report server name. The drop-down list won't provide you with anything useful at this point unless you've recently connected to a report server. But fortunately, we know our report server name. We've just seen it in the Report Server Configuration Manager. If we switch back to the web service URL, that's the URL that we want to connect to. So the name of the machine and then the / report server 2017. Annoyingly, I can't just copy this. I can't select and copy the text, which is a little bit frustrating. So what I could do here is actually just copy the URL from the report web portal. It's almost identical. It's just that instead of reports 2017, it's report server 2017. So let's just go away and copy the URL that we had here for the report web portal, and we can grab that, just check that that's the same, and then we can go back to Report Builder, paste that in, and then just update the name there to say report server 2017. Then we can click Connect, and hopefully that won't take too long. So there we are, we're successfully connected. We can then choose to save this report. So if we hit save, we can then point to that report server using the link at the top. We don't have any folders to save this in. If we wanted to create a folder, we could do that from the web portal. So I could go to the web portal and maybe let's create a simple little folder to install our sample reports. So we can click into there and say sample reports, and then click create to create a folder. And that should appear shortly. There it is. I've called it sample report rather than reports, but that's okay. I can then switch back to Report Builder. Let's just cancel the dialog box and then hit save again. And this time you should see our sample report folder has appeared. So I can then double click on that folder. I can give my report a new sensible name, my first report, and then click save to essentially deploy that report to our report server. Okay, so let's just check that the report has appeared where it's supposed to. We can switch back to the web portal and we can navigate into our sample report folder and find my first report, and then we can click on the name of that report to load it within the web portal. And anyone else with access to this report server can indeed view this report, providing they've been given permission to do so. On the subject of allowing access to your reports, it's worthwhile knowing that when you first install the report server, only members of the local administrators group can access the items on it. If you want to allow other people to see these reports, you have to add them, you have to provide permission. You can do this from the site settings menu. If you head to the little gear icon at the top, the little cog icon, you can click on that and then choose site settings. In the menu on the left hand side there's a security option, and here you can add groups or users to allow them to have permission to view your reports. Again, this isn't meant to be a comprehensive guide to administering reporting services. If you're interested in the details of that, there is a help page available on the Microsoft website that explains exactly how to grant other users access to a report server. So if that's something you need to do beyond basically just practicing what we're practicing here, generating and deploying reports, then there's some more information available for you there. Okay, well I think that just about wraps it up for this basic guide to getting reporting services up and running on your machine. You know how to download and install the software, how to perform the basic configuration tasks, how to view the web portal, and now how to deploy reports to that web portal, and the basics of granting access to other people so that they can see your reports. So hope you've found that useful, and at least it will allow you to follow along with some of our video series now, so the reporting services one and the report builder tutorial. So hopefully you found that useful. Thanks for watching. See you next time.